we kept it simple, but then we were also open to exploration. So I think the whole model around, because sometimes we're still talking about the same stuff that we spoke about, say, 15, 20 years ago. And if we can't do certain elements correctly and well, there's a lot of noise in there. So
Yep.
that's where we've just really maintained the simplicity approach to.
Very happy to welcome Ben Simpson. He's the Director of Projects and Innovation at Paris Saint-Germain. Ben, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much, Sean. It's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for grabbing me at the sports. I can never get
Sports
that
Tech
right.
World Series. Like it's an acronym that shouldn't be that hard, but it seems to that it is. Yes, we did catch up at Sports Tech World Series at the MCG, and you were speaking, and I said, hey, I want to continue some of that conversation on the podcast. So thank you very much for accepting, and good to see you back in Paris.
Yes, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Not a problem. Well, I always get started asking people how they got their start in the world of sports business. You're now in Paris, but you do not have a Parisian accent. So tell us a little bit about how you got your start in the world of sport.
I guess every podcast I listen to with someone working in the sports field, there's always that story around, I wanted to be a pro athlete. Yeah, like back I'm from country Victoria, Wangaratta.
Okay.
So, every kid there has a big passion or not big passion, their exposure to sport is on the doorstep. So I grew up with
what was your sport that you were hoping to achieve?
Like I had a vested interest in Australian football. Obviously wasn't good enough, but then so I thought, okay, there was an option to become a rower.
Mm-hmm.
So there was like a talent ID option at the VIS. Started to do that and got excited about that. But then I got called for a job in Qatar.
Mm-hmm.
And that's kind of where my pathway kind of took off to kind of where I am now.
So I don't like going too fast and skipping over the first steps, because it's the first steps that are normally some of the important ones. So what drew you into the sports science? Was it a little bit of that talent ID and seeing that from an athlete side, or was it just something that you were interested in?
I think I just had an invested interest, like as an athlete myself, or as a amateur athlete playing Ovens Murray football. It's a decent standard. So looking after yourself from a physical perspective, from recovery, making sure your nutrition's correct. So I played with a few guys that had exposure to AFL, so we could kind of align a bit. And I found a university down in Ballarat, University of Ballarat. Now it's the Federation University. So, I didn't have to go, I went far from Wangaratta, but still it was like a bigger country town. I wasn't going down to the city, so I wouldn't be too lost. So that's where I got my I wanted to stay in the sports world, but I didn't really know. So this like human movement and sports science degree kind of gave me that capacity. Okay, could I become a teacher in physical education? Could I work with a elite team? And from there was an internship at the VIS.
Yep,
I
Victoria
applied for
Institute of
that.
Sport. Yep.
Correct. Yeah, I applied for that. It was like an ongoing every year. They sent a call out to kind of Victoria Uni and the other universities in Melbourne, University of Ballarat. And then a few people were actually surprised that I got the position. I was fortunate. I don't know. I spoke to the guys there, Troy Flanagan and a few other people that were working were running the kind of sports science department at VIS. And he said, you just had an interest in, as I said, that kind of trying to explore the sports science world, in my hometown in Wangaratta and understand it a bit better.
And so was that, I
Unfortunately,
mean, I don't want to cut you off, but a lot of the times I'm talking to people who, want to get in, and then they get in and they're doing inside sales, or they're doing operations, or they're setting up tents and marquees, and they're just doing a bit of everything to sort of find their space. Were you doing the same thing in the sports science thing, like doing some stuff at footy clubs and figuring out different things with different sports, and that curiosity sort of helped you find a space?
Yeah, I think like across from working in a gym to doing PT to working at I think it's SMA Sports Medicine Australia in Melbourne. So that was like a job that I could be exposed a bit to more the commercial side and understand. Okay, how do they set up conferences? how do they manage the medical kind of platform in the Victoria ecosystem. So there was a lot of exploratory there, but I really wanted to kind of key in and focus on working with team sports. So like field hockey,
Hmm.
soccer, football. So that were my kind of key elements when I was at the Victorian Institute of Sport. And mind you, it was a voluntary position. So that's what, you got to reference that to up and coming practitioners that want, sometimes you have to kind of bite the bullet, and, you may not be able to live on the weekends,
Yep.
but you can maybe find a pathway where down the track you can, you know,
And
have
so,
those opportunities.
what was your pathway like to go from a voluntary position, being a sponge, effectively trying to learn as many things as possible, but at some point, they're like, I want a paying gig. What I want a job, as your father would say. When are you going to get a job, Ben? No, what was that first proper gig?
Well, I guess the SMA, Sports Medicine
Hmm.
Australia, was one of those ones, but that was totally an office job. So normally I'd be rolling into work in shorts and like not a t-shirt, but I could go into the office and take a shower after riding in, or so I wouldn't. Yeah, I'm going to say that was my first official kind of job in that kind of element. But then the Qatar gig came about by just, again, sending emails to random job shout outs.
And so that was a Aspire Academy. Like, was it just scouring the internet looking for jobs? Take us through what that
I
role was.
Yeah, I found there was a senior sports physiologist job opportunity come up, and obviously I was nowhere near senior capacity, and I just said to the company, to the people, listen, this is my CV. If ever anything comes up that suits my profile, I'm available to talk and see what kind of projects that you guys are offering. And long and behold, the person came back to me and said, listen, we're not hiring for anyone now, but maybe down the track. And 2 months later, he actually came out for one of our SMA conferences in
Okay.
Melbourne, a Finnish guy who used to work at the Australian Institute of Sport
Hmm.
in TID. So I said, okay, I need to do as much as possible for this guy. So I drove out to the airport to make sure he got like a VIP service. And, we spent a bit of time. And next thing he said, okay, come over for a job interview in 2 months later. Um, and kind of the rest was history. So the job was kind of offered there and then on the spot.
And so that was talent ID.
Yeah,
And
that was the talent ID. Yeah, talent
what
ID
did that
officer.
entail? Like, what did that entail? Like bringing in your sports science piece.
Yeah, so identifying kind of local talents within the Qatar kind of talent pool. So going out to schools, let's just say high school in Australia, you'd go out to all the schools in Australia or in Victoria, but because Qatar's such a small, population pool is quite small, so we could easily target all the schools in the country. We'd go out there and we do a 3-stage testing kind of a platform. So like a bronze level, silver level, and then a gold level, which would be held at the Aspire Training Centre. And then classic physical profiling, anthropometric profiling. And then when you get to the later stages, you kind of involve the coaches to get their insights on the on the aspects of the more athletics. So it was more around athletics, kind of Olympic sports. There we're kind
Hmm.
of targeting from a talent ID angle.
And so at your time at Aspire, you sort of, like, because you're in the organisation that is all about developing talent and is high performance, you sort of got to move around the organisation and I guess spread yourself professionally.
Yeah, so after 4 years in the TID role, talent identification role, I moved across to the football, the soccer department. One of my Spanish colleagues, he said to me, "Don't waste your time in that talent ID kind of position. You need to come across to football, because if you want to go into Europe and explore that kind of world, then you need to kind of jump ship now. I'm looking for someone." So similar kind of aspect, but more like working directly with a team. So anywhere from under 14 to under 18. So it's kind of like the Aspire model is essentially the national team, the kind of that is training and going to school at the center. So early days, we would kind of spread the load a bit in terms of doing sports science, doing S&C, doing nutrition. But as Aspire grew, you could there was more siloed roles. So I would be a bit more specific to the sports science aspect. And then you'd have a strength and conditioning coach come in. So, and
And was
it's
that
grown and
sort
grown.
of like, if you were starting to see your path, did you have the goal in mind of, like your friend that said, come out of talent ID and get into football, to go, what does sports science look like at the pro level, potentially somewhere in Europe? And is that sort of what you started sort of chipping away at that goal and sort of building out the skill set to be able to fill out the CV?
Yeah, I guess I was kind of fortunate enough to cross paths with some of these key people within my trajectory. Not trajectory, just my kind of life pathway.
Yeah, I
So,
mean, but it shows the importance of these, I guess, it's not really networking, but like making these meaningful connections along the way that
yeah.
you don't know that will pay off later. And it sounds like you've had a few of those that have definitely paid off.
Yeah, exactly. A couple of good friends still, and you can always lean on them for any support that's needed. That they're still going to be the key mentors in my book. One guy's a Spanish guy, another guy is a French guy. So they have very potentially different ways of looking at things, but when you bring the both of them together, it created really a strong kind of a collective working group. So again, it goes back to, it's not necessarily how much you know, but it's who you know and how you kind of treat those relationships.
Yep. I think it's that second piece, like how you treat them and how they remember you, and you're
Sure.
memorable for a reason, and you've made that impression, because it's not just a matter of having everyone's name in the list. It's like they've got to know
Sure.
you. So
Yeah.
10 years ago, just over 10 years ago, you make the move. How did the move to Paris Saint-Germain come about?
I guess one step before, so the former colleague and good friend Martin Boucher, he made the move in 2014 to take on the head of performance role at PSG. So he was a former colleague in Qatar. We used to live together, run together. So a very good friend, and again, he's one of those key mentors. I made the decision to finish in Qatar at the end of 2014 to go and live with my wife in Sweden. So there, I was just kind of exploring, okay, residency, where I could work, what I could do in Sweden. But in the meantime, I kind of had in the back of my mind that Martin from PSG was like, okay, I'm going to try to bring you into PSG, but just be patient.
Mm-hmm.
Had to go had to go back to, yeah. Martin made the call in, say, June-ish 2015. Then I had to fly back to Australia to spend 3 months to get my visa.
Mm-hmm.
Took a bit of time with the bureaucracy and all the politics around getting a visa and having everything translated to French. And then by the start of October, I landed in Paris and was starting a new adventure and a new role there with obviously an elite sporting club
And
organization.
going to a place like PSG, and the new guy, and like effectively, was it like starting at the bottom, but also looking at, hey, here's all the opportunity ahead?
Yeah, I guess one, I didn't. My French was very poor, nearly non-existent, and then it's a very interesting landscape. Especially, I'm sure that most elite organizations have their interesting aspects. So it's a bit complex when you arrive, kind of not necessarily mid-season, but into the season. So you don't want to disrupt the players, technical staff, the other staff around. So we made sure that we're a bit kind of conscious of that and weren't too. And that kind of goes back to my personality as well. I'm not someone that's going to jump on players. I don't have an interest in being befriending players. So we kind of worked a bit more on the side to create some different processes, some different reporting, and that could kind of help evolve the club on a kind of sports science, sports performance aspect.
And I'm guessing, I mean, much like all other parts of the business that have been transformed by more data and more tech, like that must be also almost tenfold in the on the sports science thing. Like, I'm only looking at it from the business and the ticketing and the marketing point of view, but a lot of the tech and a lot of the important tech is on field. Like how can we analyze? We've seen in other sports, Moneyball and deep analytics and those kind of things. It must, the past 10 years must be an absolutely exciting time to be in sports science.
Yeah, good question. I guess I tried to kind of speak on that and at the recent conference in Australia, and then I was at a conference last Friday, and sometimes the shiny gadgets out there that we can or cannot use are not necessarily going to always be the answer. And I guess that's what we tried to build at PSG with Martin and with a former colleague, Matthew Lacombe, was ensuring that our processes were super tight. We kept it simple, but then we were also open to exploration. So I think the whole model around, because sometimes we're still talking about the same stuff that we spoke about, say, 15, 20 years ago. And if we can't do certain elements correctly and well, there's a lot of noise in there. So that's where we're just really maintain the simplicity approach to really.
But it's a really good framework to have, because you're right. Like, there is always a bright and shiny thing that says, hey, this is the tool that will work. What are some of the, I guess, what's the questions or the matrix that you put some of those things through to go, well, we know what, we've got our framework, we know what works, we've got what it is, but can we bring this in and can it add? Are there things that you do to question and I guess validate what potentially gets pitched?
Yeah, good question. I think discussions with peers and that, it's first and foremost, it's making sure there's a question to be answered. So is there something missing that we can potentially answer with a certain innovative change, or is it a human element? Is it a technology element, or is it an organization perspective? So to kind of answer that question, it's a complex one, because nowadays all the tech and tools on the market are probably much more fast paced. You've got a lot that wants it, because they just want to be on the market, and they want to make sure it's up to speed with their competitors. So we just have to do the due diligence to make sure the product is reliable, valid, and actually giving us the information that we're after.
I mean, it must be a tough one with having innovation in your title and effectively having, that, I don't say slow approach, but approach, because innovation normally is fast and fail fast.
Sure.
And things where it's like, well, actually, we want it to be considered. Can innovation be considered? Can it be slow? Can it be structured?
Yeah, good one. I guess like Sam Robinson spoke a bit about it at the conference as well, and then I've got the colleagues on more the business side, the commercial side. That's their approach, So we just have to try and find a happy medium there where, okay, can we go fast but slow at the same time? Certain elements where we can probably push a bit. So it just comes back to framing it all, being clear from the get-go. Okay, is this product something that can be, you can work on it quicker, or is it something that we need to take our time? Or how pressing is the issue?
Is that part of what PSG Labs is sort of to give that structure to be able to push something through and pull different levers to make it go fast, but still have those checks and balances?
Yeah, speaking kind of primarily from the performance arm, I guess that's where we just have to be. Normally, the concept is like a boot camp. So application process, go through the due diligence, contracts, et cetera, then implement the product within the PSG ecosystem, wherever it may be, within what vertical it's kind of coming into. Work with the staff, the representative within that vertical. See if it's something that is useful and how practical it can be to actually answering the question. And then essentially, okay, let's write a white paper or create a case study based on that. So, but from the performance angle, okay, sometimes maybe we need a bit more time to test and validate the product. So it comes back to,
so it's all dependent on the department or the vertical it's working with. If it's high performance, it's got to meet the standards you've got and meet the and those, if that takes longer, it takes longer. But like you said,
sure.
If it's commercial or fan engagement and it's a bit of a test and learn, and you can run it at an event or on a weekend, it can be done, because
Sure.
it's it's high risk and those kind of things.
Exactly. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there.
So building out the lap, like a lot of teams, spoke to you, spoke to Rob at tennis about, saying we want to do innovation, but is it, you really have to have some structure like PSG Labs to be able to do it. Otherwise, it's sort of like you're just getting an idea and running off in different directions, and you really can't, gauge its success. Again, if all four verticals in your business are all doing something different, and you're not qualifying it, you really do need some structure in that place to be able to make innovation work. I guess is what I'm saying.
Sure. Yeah, sure. I guess there's got to be that centralized point. And I guess it kind of goes back to that just framing from the beginning. Sometimes it's a bit of like, oh, maybe this is not the best approach we could take. So we just have to kind of a trial and error. But also, like in some cases or some clubs that I've heard is maybe one of the support staff or a goalkeeper from one of the teams is bringing in a tech that he's thought could be impactful. He's kind of used it and wants to try it with his players. But if you don't have the proper frameworks in place, that it can easily kind of not slip through. But because in the end they're just trying to do what's best for their athletes. It comes back to also educating the practitioners as well about best practices. I think
And
that's
I'm
where you
and
just
I'm
have to.
Yeah, and I'm guessing in the past 18 months, one of the things that is going through PSG Labs, both on all sides of the business, is AI. How, you know, because a lot of tools are just, now with AI, a little bit of asterisks on them,
Exactly.
or they're fully fledged AI pieces. How are you looking at AI as a sports scientist and high performance person?
I know that some groups are probably more further than where we are. Speaking with some NBA teams, have managed to kind of set up some agents within to, they're not generating reports anymore. Each practitioner can come in and ask their own kind of questions and get it. So you don't spend. I think the simplest way to put it is just okay. It's going to be time. It's going to take away that time of that kind of creating the time you spend on treating data, importing data. Whereas now we can probably start to talk to the coaches, have those meaningful discussions. So, and it goes back to that kind of people skills piece. Without those, there's that gap between data and between the coaching staff. Sometimes some coaching staff they understand it well, some coaches don't. So you need to have that person in the middle that can ask those right questions to offer key insights around okay, why are we doing this? What are we getting from it? And or how can we kind of make change? So I think it's and on the flip side, on the back end of all of that is how I think there's a classic saying, garbage in equals garbage out. So you have to be very conscious of okay, the data is well treated and the information that you are actually putting into the system. And sometimes you're obviously going to miss points, but how can you catch up on that? And how can you get like a 24-hour kind of monitoring system of the athlete to really offer those, for example, like the injury kind of, if we can predict injury at 87%, but if you're missing some key elements of the player, then it's very difficult to say, okay, I can see when this injury is going to happen.
But it is, I mean, you just sort of spoke about it then. It's a lot like other businesses and other people that are using it is how can I save time? Where's the manual labor? How can I be better querying, getting those reports in a different fashion, and I'm not picking up bits of Excel and redoing them, which is every business.
Sure.
That's the I guess the first piece that frees you up to be able to tackle some of those bigger problems.
Yeah. Correct.
And you obviously spoke at Sports Innovation Week and the Sports Tech World Series. Sports Tech World Series. There you go. I mucked it up. In Melbourne, and you had another conference recently. Where do you see the industry heading as far as high performance and obviously injury prevention and trying that player health piece, and then there's the spectre of where's all that data go and all of that kind of stuff. But where do you sort of see the future of high performance going?
Yeah, good question. I think going back to all the topics that we've kind of spoken about, I think we also have to reference that it needs to be athlete centered as well. So we need to some way, first and foremost educate them. And that's why I spoke a bit about the cultural piece about Australian athletes versus maybe the athletes of the world who have kind of been, they're kind of sports science or this high performance exposure along the way, and it's just ingrained in the culture there. So I think that athlete centered approach is key
Do
going
you think
forward.
do you think that's even more so? Like the athletes are more aware and they understand their bodies more. They're leaning into the tech. We're seeing, the reports of LeBron James spending $1 million. We've still got Ronaldo running around at 40. And part of that is all the different things they're doing. Some of them will just be the trends that are on TikTok at the time, but some
Sure.
of them
Right.
will be science based. That they go, this is what I want to do, nutrition wise and sleep wise. You've obviously got a more educated athlete, 10 years down the track.
Oh yeah, definitely, definitely. Like some of that players that I've not necessarily worked directly with, but seen them and how they operate and the longevity. It just goes back to that. They're willing to probably maybe one point is that sport is life for them, so they also appreciate the outside element too. But sport is really ingrained in what they do and what their pleasures are. So they spend every kind of minutes of the day making sure that as you said, they're eating correctly, they're training properly, they're recovering properly. So I guess just giving. I still don't know how far we can go with, because obviously every person on the planet now has a mobile phone, but because we've probably got 100 or plus applications on there, sometimes they just get lost. So how can we make that much more intuitive and smarter to offer key insights to the athlete on a daily basis? Where you also, as I said, you want it athlete centered, so you want them engaged in it, but you also you don't want to put it on a plate for them either. So
Yep. It's sort
where's
of
the balance there?
giving them enough information for buy-in that they know, supplementing what they do, uh, but also you've got more data to quantify that it's happened. Whereas 10, 15 years ago, you would have said, I need you to have this sleep, or I need you to do these runs, and now you've actually got the data and the dashboards and the reports to back that
Sure,
up.
sure, correct, yeah. So and then everything is around context as well. So and that's where it kind of comes back to those relationships and just having a simple discussion. So sometimes if we're asking a wellness questionnaire to some of the players, not just here but around the world, it can be just like a standardized response. But if,
Mm-hmm.
if you can have that capacity to engage with the athlete, and then last night I had a fight with my wife, so I didn't sleep so well, or fight with my partner. That's where, if you can build that trust and build that relationship with the athlete, I think you're going to go much further with having them brought into the program.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a role like you need that human side because it's not a role that can be replaced by computers. Like it
Well,
can't just
exactly.
be cool with you're wearing a Whoop on one hand and a Apple Watch on the other and a heart monitor and you're good to go and we'll put sensors on your bed. You're right. You still need to be able to have an understanding of that human side and be able to interpret that data. So
Sure, sure.
a super important part. I always ask people what excites them about their job and what they're doing in the next 18 months, 2 years.
I guess this is a bit like exploratory for me. This whole
Mm-hmm.
element of kind of working much more, because obviously the last 10 to 15 years have been athlete facing. So, um, and you really like ingrained in the day-to-day practices. But now it's like okay, let's take a step back. Let's take that kind of bird's eye view and understand, okay, how does it look in 3 years time? How does it look in 5 years time? So it's much more a strategic kind of orientated role, and a lot of that's a bit like kind of refreshing.
Yep.
So and
I
then
mean, again, because
then
when you're in it, you don't know what the other departments are doing. You just sort of see the inputs coming into your area, and
sure,
they're either good or they're annoying, and
yeah.
you're just trying to focus on your job. But sort of that stepping back, you can sort of see, I guess, the gears of PSG moving, and sort of seeing where there might be a squeaky wheel.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Just like a small example is just having some more discussions with the commercial side, for sponsoring, for example. being able to talk to them about, okay, this is probably some sticky points and how can we address that? And I guess that's where the PSG Labs component really comes into play as well. So, covering right across the club. So, obviously, as I said, I'm purely the performance side, but you also can hear, okay, what's happening in the other departments and whether they need support or not necessarily support, like a certain kind of elements that can kind of help them. So yeah, that's exciting as well.
Well, definitely. I mean, yeah, learning a new part of the business, but also that change of perspective
Sure,
would do that. Ben, I really do
definitely.
appreciate you taking the time. I want to get to the Sports Geek closing five. Do
Okay.
you remember the first sports event you ever attended?
I think it was a Madison cycling race in Bendigo. So I don't know if you're familiar with the Madison.
The Madison, that's the one where they just keep, it's confusing as hell, and they just keep doing laps, and then someone rings the bell, and then they just go like the clappers.
So it's two cyclists on fixed wheels on a
Yep.
track,
Yep.
and they sling each other. So obviously my father and then my mother a little bit to have a track or cycling history.
Okay.
So I think our first, we'd all often go across to the Madison in Bendigo, spend the night there, and enjoy the races. Or I think Optus Oval was like a big one was Optus Oval, Richmond versus Carlton back in the day, standing in the stands. So
Back in the day, exactly. Would have been Optus Oval. Probably would have been Princess Park, maybe even at that
Princess Park,
stage.
correct. Because what is it now? It's eight. No.
It's something else, and yeah,
Okay.
I think there's still signs up for Optus Oval. I think a lot of people still call it Optus Oval.
Okay, there you go.
You would have been a lot of different sports events in different part of the world, and the food scene's definitely changed. Do you have a favourite food or a go-to food at a sports event?
Uh, it's tricky because I'm vegetarian, so
Oh, so
that
at least there is some options now. Like again, 20 years ago or even
yeah,
10 years
sure.
ago, there wasn't any option. So do you have a favourite veggie food memory at a sports event? Has there been an event
Uh,
that actually has catered for you?
yeah, because I would say that probably the Australians probably do that. Here in France, it's either nachos and cheese, but if you go to the counter too late, it's not in stock anymore. I was recently at a Las Vegas Raiders match, but more just the pathway to buy anything from the food and beverage is pretty impressive. You know how they've set it up very automated, and I didn't eat anything or drink anything there, so I can't comment. But
Do you
it'd be
find
the
yourself now in the current role? Like I do talk to a lot of people sort of in the same when they go to a sports event, they do watch a bit of the game, but then they're sort of grading, like you said, the food and the concessions and the flow and what's happening on the scoreboard. You're finding you're doing more of that now in this role,
yeah,
or you've always
I
done
guess
that.
like not a bit of both. You always like to see, okay, what's happening down at ground level with the coach, what's happening with the warm ups. What are the players doing on the sideline, and then obviously the whole spectacle around fan engagement and that, especially like in the US. So it's also present in Europe, but the US kind of that whole concept around coming and being a big spectacle. And so that was interesting. And even visiting training facilities, it all goes back to how's the best athlete flow. How can you maximize where your athlete kind of goes and passes throughout their journey on
And
a
some of that,
training
I mean,
day.
some of that is specifically high performance. Like that's where the pool is, and that's where the cold pool is, and that's where the treatment room is. But then it's also that wellness piece. So, like I was in the Detroit Pistons one, and they've got a dedicated barbershop, and then they've
Yeah,
got
sure,
another, another players area that's players only. No one else can get to it. That's all about their comfort, and so they're
sure.
comfortable to come to work. So, like all the performance isn't just what's the dumbbells and what machines you have.
Yep. No, definitely. Like that's obviously a lot more thought. It's not just the architects or ownership trying to kind of create what they think is the best practices. So you need just to have everyone on board and everyone kind of having their kind of particular say, but someone that's driving the project as well. Yeah,
And it's
but
back to
it's
what you
very,
said. It's like that athlete focus too. Like the athletes want to go. This is a place I want to come to work. This is a team and a club I want to play
sure,
for. And
exactly.
so it makes it pretty important.
Yep. Yep.
I always ask, is there someone that you follow? It might be someone online, social, or an author or like that the podcast listeners should give a follow to.
I guess there's a few too many out there that I'm not so like I've got my social footprint is next to zero. But I guess, going back to Martin, Matthew Lacombe is a key one as well. Yeah, more like on a wellness kind of perspectives, like Sam Harris.
Okay. You said you've got a small social footprint, but is there a social media platform that is your MVP that keeps you connected with people?
I guess like LinkedIn. LinkedIn is probably the easiest one for me. Got an application where Be Present that I use to not be, it's like a 5 minute window 3 times a day where you don't get onto that doom scrolling. So, like for a couple of, I don't use Instagram. I'm barely on Facebook and that. So when you do go onto a certain application, rather than just scrolling all day,
Be
there's limits on
intentional,
there as
check in with
well.
the right people, and respond to the
Sure,
people that have reached out. Cool.
sure. But then again, there's so much out there that sometimes, one, you can get lost, but two, you can also be a little bit behind the ball as well, and that's where it's important about having these type of calls, or setting up calls with people on the other side of the planet to make sure that, okay, what are you
I
up to?
mean,
What have you been?
I always joke like, I'm working in digital marketing or fan engagement or commercial. And I always find it funny when people who work in those teams get competitive with the other people. It's like, well, you're not on the pitch. You're just fighting for sponsorship dollars, or you're not going to convert a Collingwood fan to an
Sure.
Essendon fan, but in high performance, like it is on the pitch. Like it is, you are part of the team and trying to get that win. How does networking and professional development and reaching out to colleagues, like how does it work? Because when you're competing on a weekly or regular basis.
I think it's like a lot of elements. What we are doing is not necessarily, rocket science. Not going to say it's like we're not saving lives. So if you look at it at that aspect, of course, the people that are saving lives are going to be sharing as well.
Yeah, but it's more about, I mean, yeah, I guess I have spoken to people like in the tech space that roll out certain tech that does give their team a home advantage, so they don't tell
Sure,
anybody. But
sure.
so you're going to have your own secrets, but
Yeah,
then
this.
there is that case of you still build out that network. You're still trying to keep up with latest trends. You're not
Yeah,
calling up someone for hamstring awareness theories because you've got a player with hamstring problems. That's
yeah,
not how it works.
yeah. I guess like it goes back to, okay, you can share everything that you aren't doing, and then it comes back to how you implement that. So it's not just a copy and paste. So that's where it kind of sits. I think people are probably open to sharing, but in actual fact, how you
It comes down to
implement that.
execution.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So, and that's where I think a lot of people are probably more and more open and visible. So because they understand that, okay, I've nailed this. Maybe certain elements I can improve on by talking to this person or that person, but people just can't necessarily copy and paste.
absolutely. I mean, yeah, ideas are easy. It is the execution
Sure.
that is the hard bit. Ben, you were a sports mad teenager in Wangaratta, and now you're at PSG. What advice do you give that sports crazed teenager now that says, "Hey, I want to work in sport. I want to work in sports science. I want to be in high performance." What's your advice?
I think from a personality perspective, don't cheat your personality and be humble first and foremost. Everyone, that's always going to, you can't hide that. Just be curious and send emails to everyone. Doesn't matter, that they'll either answer with a yes or no. You never know. They may not even answer, and just be willing to kind of offer your services. Probably, like I think someone said it the other day, you're working in one department within the organization, but lower tier, but the goal is to become a president. That takes time. So you need to be a bit more realistic. So rather than saying, okay, I want to go and work at a big sporting organization as the head of performance, find other elements along the way if you're just starting out in your career. So
Absolutely,
because
and I will link to your LinkedIn in the show notes because it shows that the slow burn, the years that you did at Aspire, the years you did at PSG and now you're in the current role. It's not a 2 or 3 clicks and
Sure,
you're there. You got to put
sure.
in the hard yards. So Ben, I really do appreciate you coming on the podcast and sharing your story. Thanks a lot.
No, thank you very much. It's been great conversing, and I wish you all the best for your upcoming podcast and your career that you've created there. So good job.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks.